the Babaji I was looking for in the Himalayas actually is just here. The Guru that I was looking for, the Krishna I was looking for, all those, the time when I was young and I was performing that outward ceremony every morning, every evening and with my family, looking at Krishna outwardly, and now I realize he's just here. But it's real. It's not a concept, it's not a philosophy, it's real. And this is what Kriya has done for me. It has made my relationship with God so much more real.
Jai Gurudev, everybody. Today I'm here with Roshan from England, and he's a devotee of Paramahamsa Vishwananda, a Kriya yogi practitioner since many, many years from different traditions.
Yeah.
And we celebrated Babaji Day today, and I took this chance to interview you, and get a little bit, how did you come on the spiritual path? And so, that's basically my first question. How did you get on the spiritual path? What was the first spark? When was the first moment that it actually awoke? Or was it always there?
I think the journey started with my parents. Having been born into a Hindu family, we were used to doing rituals.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom would make us pray in the temple in the home, morning and evening. And that became very routine. But I think if you're looking for a spark, the ignition, if you like,
Mm-hmm.
it was really inspiration from a few books, including Autobiography of a Yogi, reading about the lives of yogis, which became fascinating for me. Also, back then, even when I was probably about 15, 16 then, also hearing about Swami Vivekananda,
Mm-hmm.
how this Hindu monk had gone to America, a foreign land, and he had become a very big personality at the World Parliament of Religions.
Mm-hmm.
That he had captured the imagination and the attention of a Western audience.
Mm-hmm.
That was very inspiring. That someone could basically step out of their tradition, walk into a completely different tradition, and be embraced. And this kind of challenged my mind that you could actually go against the grain and do things differently. And maybe that's what I was looking for, because for me, rituals was routine, it was mechanical. I really wanted something that was going to change me from the inside in a way that, at that point, rituals couldn't. And that inspiration came for me from the lives of saints and yogis.
And this life of, the life of the saints, did you get in touch with them through somebody, or was it was it an inner longing and searching? How did you even get to know about the autobiography of a yogi, Vivekananda, Ramakrishna Paramahans, and how was it just because you are coming from a Hindu family and therefore it was present there, or was it conscious looking from your side? And I don't know.
I think it was, the books were gifted to me, but I think at that point it reminded me there was this inner search that was there all going on all along. And
from small on, is that you remember there was a moment, when you're 15, 16, you say you had these moments, but it's something which was always there? Would you say?
I have two very early childhood memories. One was this repeated dream I'd have night after night after night, where I'd basically left my body and I could see planet Earth, but I didn't know how to get back in. I didn't know how to go back. And the next thing I'd know is my father would be in the bathroom trying to wake me up and splashing water in my face.
Mm.
And this would go on night after night. And the other memory I remember having was just completely losing almost my vision because I was just swamped by light.
Mm.
And I used to think maybe it's a medical condition, but I don't have a medical history like that. But just coming to a point where I would lose my vision of things because all I could see was just light. And I think this was in my memory from a young age. And I couldn't necessarily make a connection between that and the lives of yogis. But when I read how remarkable some of these yogis were, and in particular Mahavatar Babaji, he was the real inspiration for me. I realized there was something more in our human potential which I had no idea about, that my family couldn't teach me about. It certainly wasn't being taught in school. But there were yogis who, in my opinion, were at a completely different level of functioning to an ordinary human being. Mm-hmm. And I mean, as time has gone on, I've gone into the profession of science. So the idea that this can be done, and it's not just with one person, it's happening with yogis in multiple places at multiple times, means it is a proven fact. Mm-hmm. And that really started to intrigue me. And the whole this whole story about Mahavatar Babaji, this immortal Himalayan yogi who is still alive today, that really fascinated me.
Mm-hmm. Who is not fascinated from that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that was, you heard about him probably through the autobiography of a yogi, from Paramahamsa Vishwananda. Then you say you're working in the science sector. Like what happened then? You get your first inspiration. You read about the life of the saints. You get intrigued. You know that's an option for everybody. What happened then? Like you going out, you started to do different. Like you joined certain, because I know you did different kriyas. Like where did you start? How was then your life going on?
So these books were in my hands for almost 10 years. And as nice as it was to read, I didn't really know anyone that could teach me these practices. And so from the age of, up until the age of 25, I was still studying basically. And I specialized in wastewater treatment, which is my field. And it was near the end of my studies, near the end of my doctorate, I first heard about someone who could actually teach me Kriya Yoga. And I'd been waiting for almost 2 years for someone to come to London who could do this. And I'd been in contact with someone. And they finally said they were coming. And I took this Kriya Yoga initiation. And after reading this book, which was very romantic, right? The course was nothing like what I'd read in the book. It was hard. The techniques were difficult to perform. This was now something you had to discipline yourself to do. You had to develop the ability. And I was thinking, maybe this is not for me. It was nice to read, but maybe it wasn't for me.
Which kind of Kriya Yoga was it?
So this is coming from the Siddha tradition of Kriya Yoga. Mm-hmm. It's actually Babaji's Kriya Yoga, mm-hmm. which has its headquarters in Canada. And I did that course, having waited years and years, and then doubted myself if this was my path. And then within a week, my friend rang me and he said, Lahiri Masai's great-grandson is going to be in London next week and he's giving Kriya initiation. So when two events happen in a very short space of time where you have an opportunity to join in, this was a reminder to me, okay, it might be difficult, but stick with it because there's another one coming. And so in the space of literally a few weeks, I received 2 Kriya Yoga initiations. Quite different, but this for me was confirmation, okay, this is the path. Because I'd waited for so long and then it happens all at once. And then for the next few years I persevered. I persevered with these techniques.
You practiced both of them?
Mostly from Babaji's Kriya Yoga, and I went on to become an acharya in that tradition. It was at a time when you didn't apply to become a teacher. It wasn't like you joined a course. It was through invitation. So, and the invitation comes from Babaji. So I had no ambitions to become a teacher, but the tradition respectfully asked if I would like to teach. And so then I spent 2 years preparing to teach. And so that was the first tradition I was actually practicing and teaching in. And that was going well. And then my practice kind of hit a plateau. I found that I wasn't really progressing as I perhaps had hoped. Mm-hmm. And so then I came across another Kriya Yoga tradition, which I started practicing in. And this one came from the Shukdeshwar tradition. And they have a living master. And that master also said, teach this form of Kriya. So the first time I was asked to teach, it came as a surprise. The second time it happened, again, it's not that I asked, I was told, teach this. I thought, okay, there's a certain pattern starting to appear. And then this became actually a very helpful practice for me, because where I'd plateaued, I felt I was progressing again. And then again, I kind of hit a plateau. And that's when I met Paramahamsa Vishwananda. And my attraction to him was the fact that his guru was Mahavatar Babaji. This is what drew me to him in the first place.
When was that?
This would have been 2008. I received Kriya from Guruji. Bhakti Kriya as it was then, which then went on to become Atma Kriya Yoga. And this was a total revelation for me, because it is fair to say the quality of my practice basically quantum leaped after I received initiation from Paramahamsa Vishwananda. I was teaching techniques that I had previously found difficult myself to practice. And I remember the day after he gave me the Shaktipat initiation, those techniques that I'd found so difficult and struggled with for years became effortless. The idea that I could sit and meditate and empty my mind and detach from things became effortless. And I had no rational explanation for this, because I had not made any effort towards that, other than there was something in his grace and the Shaktipat that was now propelling me. And
which wasn't there in the other.
Which wasn't there for me. And for that reason, I then respectfully decided I would just focus my efforts on Atma Kriya Yoga. And Guruji said again, he also said to me, will you teach Atma Kriya Yoga? So now this had happened 3 times in 3 different Kriya Yoga traditions. And so I had to make a conscious decision, where do I place my efforts? Because I had a full-time job, I was married. You cannot really teach in 3 different traditions. It's challenging. So I decided I would focus my efforts on the tradition that I felt had made the biggest contribution to my progress, and that I felt could also help others. And so I not only decided to teach, I basically told Guruji, I am going to make my home at your lotus feet. And it's the first time I was prepared to accept a living master as my guru. Because until then, it was actually Mahavatar Babaji. For me, Babaji was my guru. And when I met Paramahamsa Vishwananda, he actually told me, which is rather unusual, he said, do you realize I'm your guru? Which, if you know about Guruji, normally he does not say that. He will say, if you feel it, I am. But in this instance, he was very direct. He said, do you realize I'm your guru? And in that moment, my heart sank. Because he was basically telling me, it's not Babaji, it's me. And he read my mind, and then he said, look, the way to the Param Guru is through the Satguru. And now this all made sense. And so it was Guru Purnima, and he said, I'm going to make you a Jal Brahmachari tonight. And it all happened very quickly. Me and my wife got initiated on Guru Purnima. The same day he broke the news to us that I'm your guru. We didn't really know what it meant, what we were taking on in terms of responsibility, but it felt right. And for me, he was so strongly connected with Mahavatar Babaji, and later I was to find out even more strongly than I realized in that moment. Everything had been leading up to this, and it all made sense. These were stepping stones, being involved in Kriya Yoga traditions, being asked to teach in them, moving from one to the next, which eventually led me to Guruji. It was a perfect plan.
Amazing. So Kriya Yoga was basically your constant companion throughout your spiritual path. You say you're married. You have 2 children. I know they're by now grown up almost.
16 and 20.
16 and 20.
Yeah.
Are they also all on the path? Were they always sharing the path with you, or how was that spiritual life, family life combination?
So I think there's 2 key moments in my life. The first is coming across Kriya Yoga. This was a game changer for me. And it started this fascination with Kriya Yoga, with Mahavatar Babaji, that would eventually then lead to the next main moment in my life where I actually met my guru, my Satguru. And the amazing thing about Guruji was that I first met him, but he very quickly started asking me about my family, and then every time I'd meet him, he would ask me, "Where is your wife?" It's like it was very clear he wanted to meet Rina, my wife. And this was actually really important for us as a family, because although my wife and my family respected and supported my journey in Kriya Yoga, they were not really a big part of it. And so we had our practices, but they were, let's say, different. Guruji kind of brought us together spiritually. You know, we were very, as a couple, we were close. But he brought us together even closer spiritually, where he brought us both on the same path. And that's the first time we found ourselves actually dedicated to the same path, to the same guru. And even my boys, I mean, today, for example, in the morning, all 4 of us will do Kriya. My 2 boys, they're still in school. They start the day with Kriya, and then they do puja, and then the day starts. So I'm doing puja upstairs. My boys are doing puja in their rooms. There's 3 pujas going on. And my wife, when she can, she's also doing puja. But Guruji really brought us together as a family spiritually. And I often say this, and it really touched me. It was about a year ago. So during COVID, my eldest son was doing exams online. And I knew he had to give an exam at 9:30 in the morning. And so I kind of peeked into his room about 45 minutes before to see what he was doing, and he was doing puja. And this is how he was preparing for his exam. Now, back in the day when I was his age, I would have been cramming it in. I would have been studying to the last minute before the exam. And here he is doing puja. But it tells you something about the confidence and the role that Guruji has played in our family as a unit, not individually. And in that sense, we're all on the same path. And it's so nice, you know, that we have many things within a family that we can share, but the love of our Guru, the same spiritual practice, our approach to worship in terms of, puja is the same. And conversely, I also have friends where this is not the case. And I'm just so grateful to Guruji that he's done this for us. Because our family is effectively a Sangha.
Yeah, and it's nice to see when, especially the path of meditation, where you go inside, it can become a very solitary path where you do your own stuff, you make your own experiences, and if you can share it in your family, then it really becomes, like you say, a Sangha. If you would take all the different steps, like obviously the Kriyas, the different Kriya Yoga practices, they come from Mahavatar Babaji, we know they were adapted to different societies, different times. Is there something which, like, somebody sees today this video and is like, or this Kriya, that Kriya, is there something where you can say, like, give a taste what you see as a difference between the different practices, or an inspiration where you would recommend more or less or whatever, having been practicing different things?
Yeah, I mean, I came from a Kriya Yoga tradition that was very meditation and pranayama based, and also very Hatha Yoga based. And for me at that time, that was perfect. And then I moved to another tradition that was very energetical. Not that the others were not, but it was more along the lines of the traditional Kriya Yoga of Lahiri Messiah, Yukteswar, this lineage. And they were amazing Kriyas. But when I came across Atma Kriya Yoga, at first I didn't understand. In fact, it's fair to say I was not even drawn to this idea of Bhakti. It did not resonate with me.
The path of Bhakti did not resonate with you?
Yeah. Which is, of course, an integral part of Atma Kriya Yoga because it's infused with the 9 forms of Bhakti. But as time has gone on, I've realized this is actually the most important part. Because when I look at Guruji, and he is simply that embodiment of divine love, when he is able to awaken that same love in your Kriya practice, love by its very definition, which means it's unlimited, means there's an explosion in the quality of the Kriya. And I would not say it happened on day one. It took time. But the way I practice now, where I'm focusing in my Kriya on the divine, my relationship with the divine, where my focus is on how to attain the lotus feet of the divine, that the idea of patience, of humility, is as important to me as anything else on my spiritual path, which may not have seemed so obvious at the beginning, makes me understand now that the spiritual path is not necessarily about what you take, it's also about offloading what you don't need. And it becomes simpler. And the simpler it becomes, the lighter the load, the faster you go. And as time has gone on, and of course it's still in progress, it's still in process, whereas the other Kriyas hit a plateau, Atma Kriya Yoga just doesn't stop. In fact, I would say in the last few years, it's started to go more like this. And the more you throw yourself into the path of Bhakti, the more you become inspired by in my case now, the lives of great yogis who are bhaktas, who are devotees of God. You realize they are also great yogis, right? Yes, they may not be sitting in meditation or doing pranayama, but they're in that state of bliss, which every yogi wants. And this is something that was never on my radar early on. But even like sitting and talking to you now, like my heart is I can feel what it's doing to my heart just talking about this. And I used to get inspired to talk about things, but it never lighted my heart up. And what comes from the heart comes from that place of sincerity. It comes from that place of a deeper knowing that I know that that's where he is seated. The one I'm searching is actually seated there. And the idea that when I talk about him, he reacts inside of me, and that the Babaji I was looking for in the Himalayas actually is just here. The Guru that I was looking for, the Krishna I was looking for, the time when I was young and I was performing that outward ceremony every morning, every evening with my family, looking at Krishna outwardly, and now I realize he's just here. But it's real. It's not a concept, it's not a philosophy, it's real. And this is what Kriya has done for me. It has made my relationship with God so much more real. And everything I was looking for on the outside, and I continue to look for on the outside, Atma Kriya Yoga made it very clear it's actually just here. But not as a concept, as a living reality. And when you know that the true meaning of Atma Kriya Yoga is this constant awareness that the divine is present in every action, that the divine is not separate to you, that the divine is the beginning, the middle, and the end. When you have a system of yoga that makes this a living reality, and we know that if you read about Kriya Yoga, it talks about these amazing benefits and how you can achieve the goal of realization in one lifetime. But all of a sudden, it's been catapulted by the grace of Paramahamsa Vishwananda. This is something you take quite seriously. You know, and that I never ever imagined in my life this would be possible. And I honestly do not believe anything is impossible now through Atma Kriya Yoga. And I don't say that out of a place of ego. I say that from a place of absolute awe and amazement. I remember when I first started teaching Atma Kriya Yoga, I was seeing things happening in students in a time frame of 1 to 3 months that previously was happening over 10 years. And I am not afraid to make that statistic. The time frame had shrunk so much, not to create a false expectation, but to say, look, it is different for a reason. There's something very different about the grace, the Shakti path, the presence of the Master, and what they are doing through the system of Kriya. And that's why I went down that path, and I have no regrets.
Oh, nice. It's actually, when you say that, it's almost like Krishna speaking the Bhagavad Gita, because when you go in the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 6, he says, and the greatest amongst the yogis is the one who loves me and who surrenders to me. It's a yogi is not necessarily the one with the long beard sitting in his it's the one who has love for God. It is the devotee. It is the one who is completely surrendered to God. And Atma Kriya Yoga, as you said, is rooted in Bhakti, and it awakens this love relationship with God. It has God realization as the ultimate goal. So,
and even on a day like today, like, you know, Babaji Day, the day that Mahavatar Babaji chose to not leave his body, even my understanding of him has changed. Babaji came across to me in the beginning as this immortal yogi, this miraculous yogi, this one who had conquered life and death. It was a mysterious figure, somewhere in the Himalayas. And how I thought, maybe, wow, what if one day I could go there and find him? But he was very distant, let's say. And then when I look at Babaji today, and I see how he is, his simplicity, the fact that he has a name that simply is a common name that is a reference to Father. It's not even a real name. Yes, we have given him this title, Mahavatar, the great avatar. But he doesn't sit on a throne. He doesn't have a crown. He just has a cloth. There's no ancient temple in India dedicated to him. And yet they call him the Jagat Guru, the Guru of Gurus. So for one who is so huge, who is like this strong undercurrent that underpins all the spiritual traditions, for some, he is visible. For others, they don't even know he's there. For someone so great, look at his simplicity, his humility, and his eternal service to humanity. Because that's why he chose not to leave, to become an eternal servant to those who are seeking. And that's the Babaji I love. That's the Babaji that inspires me today to offload all the rubbish I've been collecting of how great I can be or what I can achieve, because actually it slows you down. And for someone who's
it's
so...
not about what you can gain, it's about what you can give.
Yeah, and that's the greatest joy. And a bhakta longs to serve the divine. They don't want realization. They just want to serve. The idea that you can be a servant to God and to serve Him eternally doesn't require you to achieve anything other than to have this closeness and this loving relationship where you are at service to him. But this word service is also so misunderstood. It's not like a form of slavery. It means that you are purely giving from the place of the heart, from out of love, because there's nothing greater than that. And it's simply an expression of your love.
That's what service is.
And in the end, for me, Guruji, Babaji, they are simply embodiments of love. Our Atma is simply love.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm searching for all along has been love. Atma Kriya Yoga is an expression of that love. And in the end, all that will be left is this love. So it's so simple. If you focus on that love. And to do that, you have to almost simplify your life. And yes, I feel I still get inspired by these stories of great yogis. But that's what they achieved, the things I was reading about, their siddhis and their great attainments. In many cases, that was the byproduct of something much greater.
That is what the path of Bhakti does, no?
Exactly.
Once you have him, everything is coming automatically.
Exactly. And for me, Paramahamsa Vishwananda and Mahavatar Babaji, there's no two greater beings than them. And I'm humbled that the one I'd read about all along, that had really started my whole fascination with spirituality, is the guru of my guru. And I could not ask for a closer relationship.
It's no coincidence that...
It's no coincidence, and maybe this is what it was leading up to all along.
I guess, for sure, otherwise it wouldn't be like that, though.
Yeah.
Nothing happens without him willing it, no?
Exactly. But the presence of the living master is important. It was essential. Because the direction, the focus, the opportunity the living master presents, I could never have got that out of books. And that relationship with a living master has been invaluable. Because I remember reading books and thinking, I wish I lived 50 years earlier and I could have walked with you. I remember reading about Yogananda, saying, if only I was born 50 years earlier, I could have maybe met you. Well, it's a nice thought, but it's a dream, right? But we have a living master today that I can walk with.
It's funny because it's exactly it's easy to follow a master who is not physically present anymore. I remember actually Guruji was in the beginning when I met him. He was giving a satsang. He was saying, many seekers say, how beautiful would it have been if I met Paramahamsa Yogananda? How beautiful would it have been if I would have been with Anandamoy Ma? How beautiful would it have been if I would have met Jesus? How beautiful would it have been?
Yeah.
When the masters are gone, everybody wants to be with the master.
It's
but
true.
when the master is here, very few.
It's true.
Because the master is obviously bringing you to the true path, and therefore it is the intensity gets up and there's no more fooling yourself.
Yeah.
So I count you amongst the lucky who got the grace of meeting the master. If you read the story of those saints, they all say, you meet many gurus like Yogananda, how many saints and great yogis he has lived and got taught by, but when he met his Satguru, that was just different things. And the same, it's for everybody. The relationship with the Satguru is an eternal one. And to meet him in this lifetime is truly the greatest grace.
And I increasingly feel that actually, even though I met Guruji much later than I'd first come across Mahavatar Babaji, There's a part of me that believes it was actually Guruji that took me to Mahavatar Babaji, who then brought me back to him.
Yeah.
Because when I look back on my life and things that have happened and things that Guruji has known about me, which no one could have known, it actually almost seems to suggest that he was instrumental in everything that was going on years before I met him. He was orchestrating things. And this is the miracle. And I look back on it now, the things I was reading about in the books. And I remember when I became Jal Brahmachari that night, just before I was about to get my Brahmachari initiation, the Jal Brahmachari initiation, Guruji said, right, everything you've been reading about in those books is going to become true now. I thought for a moment he might say the opposite, but he said, no, it's all true. And the miracles I've seen, the things that he's transformed in my life, my family's life, in the Sangha, I don't have to go looking at those books anymore because I have someone who is performing that on a daily basis.
It's not reading about history, but becoming part of the story.
I like that.
Very nice. Would you like one last thought, maybe for somebody who is listening to that, like a last maybe inspiration or idea for a seeker, or whatever you want to share for the audience?
You know, people say, can you give me a tip? What do you suggest? What do you recommend? Well, it has to come from a place of experience. If there's two things I can share with you that have really shaped my spiritual path, that have exceeded my expectation, that have really brought me to another place altogether that I never believed was possible, it was the encounter with Paramahamsa Vishwananda, and then him giving me a spiritual practice of Atma Kriya Yoga, which allows me to experience again and again that gift he gave me from the very beginning of this divine love. And it's like a small gift he's put in your pocket to say, when you need it, take it out, use it, and you'll come back again and again and again and again. And this has been the greatest spiritual gift that we can only call grace. But that grace is available. And what have you got to lose? I'd say to anyone, what have you got to lose? And I think on that note, I'd say that's the best thing I could share with anyone.
Thank you very much.
Jai Gurudev.
Jai Gurudev.